Did you know that Leonardo da Vinci was really into tracing? In fact, he was so good at tracing that people would come from miles away, not to see the painting, but to see the tracing. It's quite possible that his most famous painting, the Mona Lisa, was something that he had traced onto the canvas. In his day, during the Renaissance period, tracing was just a normal thing. It was part of the business. And they called their type of tracing doing a cartoon. It's kind of funny, isn't it? Where our words survive and change over time. Their cartoon was not Mickey Mouse. So what they'd do was they would get their paper and do a drawing of whatever it is they wanted to paint, and as accurately as possible on the piece of paper. And then on the other side, they would rub black chalk or charcoal. And then they would put that on their canvas and trace around. And the one that people came to see off Leonardo's was set up of 8 pages that he had stuck together. So quite a large piece. And one observer who saw folks coming to see his tracing said that men and women, young and old, flocked to see it as if they were going to a solemn festival. Isn't that funny? It's kind of like people today flocking to the Louvre to see the Mona Lisa. If you'd like to know a little bit more about how cartoons were made in the Renaissance period, there's an excellent video by Getty Museum called Almost Invisible, the Cartoon Transfer Process. I'll leave a link to it in the description. I really enjoyed watching the artist create the cartoon. Well, you may wonder, why was tracing so popular in the Renaissance period? Why would someone like Leonardo do tracing? Well, often it was to do with money. And back then, the Grand Masters would have a studio, and working for them would be apprentices. When you're painting, as they're learning to paint, one of the hard things to do is hands and the folds of cloth, and just how it drapes across the body. And so it was quite common to do these cartoons and then reuse them across different paintings. You need some hands? Yeah, I've got a cartoon of some hands. Use that one. Need some folded dress? How it flows? Perfect. I've got just the right cartoon. Add that to the picture. And they were pumping out these paintings. So the tracing was just part of their industrial process. The good painters would take the cartoon and then they could adjust it on the fly. They go, great, here's the proportions, this is what I'm after, but this hand isn't quite where I want it. I'll move it up here. So what about Leonardo and his tracing? One of the things that fascinated him was a device called a camera obscura. Now, in Latin, camera means a chamber, and obscura means dark. So camera obscura meant a dark chamber, dark room. Isn't that funny too? We use that dark room, how it's come across into photography for when they were processing the film in the dark room. So Da Vinci is quoted as saying, "The eye, the window of the soul, is the chief means whereby the understanding can most fully and abundantly appreciate the infinite works of nature." He loved the eye and understanding how it worked. And this camera obscura would use a dark room or a box, and there'd be just a pinprick for light to come through. And there's buildings that have been made where the light of the sun will come through just one day a year. So The camera obscura has been known for thousands of years, but it was quite popular in Da Vinci's day, and he himself did over 200 drawings, diagrams of how the camera obscura was put together. And he did lots of experiments with the aperture, so where the light would come in, what size it could be, the shape it could be, whether you had multiple apertures. He said something about the camera obscura. The quote is, "If the facade of a building or a place or a landscape is illuminated by the sun, and a small hole is drilled in the wall of a room in a building facing this, which is not directly lighted by the sun, then all objects illuminated by the sun will send their images through this aperture and will appear upside down on the wall facing the hole. You will catch these pictures on a piece of white paper, which placed vertically in the room, not far from that opening, and you will see all the above-mentioned objects on this paper in their natural shapes or colours." How about that? He was holding up a piece of paper and observing how the image was captured on it, and do you think he used that for tracing? Well, quite possibly. It was some 50 years later, the first person who was recorded writing down that you could use a camera obscura as a drawing aid was a chap, Giovanni della Porta, about 1558. So whether Leonardo used the camera obscura or not for his drawings, we've got no proof. But he was certainly fascinated with it, and other people of his time recognised the value of using it for drawing, and Leonardo himself had practice capturing images with a piece of paper. In 1620, there was a Dutch inventor, Cornelis Drebbel, and he was able to turn the image the right side up, because if you look through those pinhole cameras, they work just like our eye does, and when we see something, it actually hits our brain upside down and then gets translated right way up for us, which is remarkably good. Otherwise, the world would look very strange. And when they used the camera obscura, everything, they would see the image, but it would be upside down. So this inventor worked out how to turn it right side up, and he sold his invention to an artist. How about that? And the artist wrote about how using it for drawing enabled the figure and the contour and the movements to come together naturally therein and in a grandly pleasing fashion. Isn't that lovely? So the artist was really excited that he could use the camera obscura for tracing. As time moved on, in 1806, a new type of drawing aid was created. You recall that we had the camera obscura, now we got the camera lucida. Now, camera meant chamber or room, and obscura meant dark, but lucida meant bright. So we went from a dark room to a bright room. They had seen the light. And this is a small portable prism, which when you look down into it, you can see what's in front of you. So you just place your drawing paper on the table, look down into the prism, and draw what you can see. You just trace around what's reflected onto that paper below you. It's possible that this is the tool that the American painter Thomas Eakins used, and he painted a very realistic picture, a number of realistic works, such as shad fishing at Gloucester on the Delaware River in 1881. And how do we know that he was tracing this particular painting? Well, the Philadelphia Museum of Art curator Mark Tucker used infrared to see beneath the paint, and they were able to examine the pencil drawings, and they noticed that the under drawings were made up of unhesitating lines that had unmistakable trace qualities to them. And I wonder what would happen if we looked at the Mona Lisa under infrared. Would we see those unmistakable, traceable lines? Well, the camera lucida was used a lot in scientific drawings because you could get terrific detail from looking through the prism and tracing what you saw. So a lot of botanical work, birds, snails, and insects, all those sort of old-fashioned drawings were often done with the camera lucida as the drawing aid. And you can still buy them today. There's a website, neolucida.com, and they're busy selling this tool that had been invented, when was it? 1806. So still popular with artists today. So projecting for tracing subjects for art has been going on for ages, and may well have been used by many of the old masters for the tremendous detailed work that they did. You can see quite a difference between someone like Vincent van Gogh, who was painting freehand, and the expressionists of his time versus the previous masters of like Rembrandt, have very tight lines, and it's just almost photographic at times. So the question some have is, well, they don't even have it as a question, they use it as a statement, say tracing is cheating. I kind of think that's a glass half full view. Glass half full? Glass half empty. It's a glass half empty view, thinking that tracing is cheating. I think tracing is actually a solution to a problem that many artists have. And it's less to do with the skill of getting the proportions right, because there's many different ways you can use. You can use proportional dividers, grid setups. There's quite a few mathematical ways of understanding the proportions of your mouth, to your ear, to your eyes, the distance of body parts. You can actually, there's some very skilled artists who once they've learnt that, can pull together drawings beautifully. But then there's other artists, and I'm sure they're in the same situation that those Renaissance painters were in, or like Leonardo. They don't have enough time. Time is money when it comes to art. Doing a painting can take a long time. Some artists will spend 1-2 years on a painting. They'll be doing other works as well. That painting consumes them to get it right. They've got lots of creative works in them, and they also want to get paid. So using a projection or tracing is a really adequate way for them to get the job done, get more art out. I know for myself, I have no problem doing tracing. I don't use charcoal anymore though for when I do a cartoon. I use pan pastel. It's just a very fine pigment, and when you rub it on the back of the paper, so I'll do a line printing, piece it all together. The pan pastel's just so much less mess than ordinary pastel or a charcoal, which tends to get all over the paper that I use. So pan pastel I found is very good, and I just haven't got the time to to do the drawing as well as the painting, because I paint very slowly and I draw very slowly as well. And my goal is to get the painting done and to find emotion in that painting. And that's really the thing. You know, it doesn't matter whether you have a trace or if you paint from a photograph. Here's a example of someone who used photographs for their painting. This particular painter, a number of the people he wanted to paint weren't in town, and so he asked for photos of them so he could use those as references for his painting. Do you think he was cheating? No, he was just doing what made sense in order to get the job done. And whether you do work from a photo reference or use tracing, what matters is the final output. Does what you produce, does it speak to someone's heart? Do they look at it and it induces an emotion? And if you're able to do that, then fantastic. You know, that's why we look at these works of Leonardo da Vinci and we're moved by them. Not because of whether he traced them or not, but because of the story that they tell and the emotion that he captured. If you're an artist and you ever feel doubt about doing some tracing, well, it's been done for hundreds of years. Don't worry about it. Just worry about the final output. And does it really produce the result you're looking for? Well, thanks to everyone who listened in to me ramble on about tracing and the art of it. If you give the video a like, I'd love that too. Thank you so much. Bye.